Hello everyone, Carl again, the Have a Go Homesteader, and today we're having a go at making goat's milk soap. Now, this really is a Have a Go Homesteader challenge for me because it's something, of all the videos I've made, none have actually made me more nervous than making this one. And it's not because I'm nervous about making soap. I'm not nervous about using the lye, the sodium hydroxide. What I'm nervous about is just making a product that's not that great, because I've never done this before. This is the first time I've ever tried making cold pressed soap. If you've been following me for a little while, you'll know that I'm certainly not scared to try new things. I really am very confident and comfortable making mistakes on camera in the big wide world. I'm okay with that, and I do it all the time. This is just an area that, for some reason, the more I delved into it, the more complicated it seemed to get, and the more difficult I found it to find a position where I was able to share what I'd learned with you. However, I kind of think I'm there now, and I learn by doing. So by coming with me today, we're going to be doing it together, and then we'll learn a lot more from it by the end of it as well, both of us. What I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be making a cold pressed goat's milk soap. The reason I found this so difficult is because there are so many different recipes out there, and they all call for things that I don't generally have on hand, and I didn't want to be going and buying a load of things to make this with. I wanted to do it with things I've got on hand. So I wanted to make some adaptations and change things around. So I've done that, and I've come to a recipe that I think is going to work. But I suppose where I'm kind of landing on this is to say to you guys, if you want to have a go at making soap, it doesn't have to be goat's milk soap. Goat's milk soap really is the same recipe as any other soap. It's just you use goat's milk instead of water when you mix with the lye. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But if you want to make goat's milk cold pressed soap or any other cold pressed soap, what I would suggest is you've got two options. One, you either find a recipe, you just get everything you need for that recipe and follow it. Really simple, and you can use this recipe if you like. What I really wanted to do is understand the process so I could kind of make up my own recipes, and that's what this is. This is my own. And to do that, you need to understand a little bit more about the different types of oils. You've basically got wet oils and dry oils. When I say dry oils, I mean oils that are solid at room temperature. So here we're using coconut oil and we're using lard. And then our wet oils, which are liquid at room temperature, we're using olive oil. It's a bit simplistic, but basically you want to use 2/3 dry oil, 1/3 wet oil. And once you've done that, you can start mixing and matching and really play about with it and do what you want. Now, there's a few resources I found really useful. The Soap Queen website, although it's a bit of a maze, it is great and does have a lot of information. And believe it or not, this is going to be a little bit self-serving. The best video I found to follow and actually make sense of it from a really simple point of view, coming at it and giving you some confidence, is actually a video filmed by my friend Alan that was published on this very channel around a year ago when I was suffering with an injury and I couldn't make many videos. He kindly did that for me, and that's actually one of the best videos I've found for demystifying it. So hopefully this one will bolt nicely together with that one and really go the whole way to demystifying the process. So let's talk about what we're going to need. Really simple things. You're going to need a stick blender, and you're going to need something to put your soap into to let it dry. And we're just going to use these old juice containers, and the first thing we're going to do is actually just chop these up and make them into our molds. And then finally, you're going to need containers for your ingredients and a decent sized bowl for mixing in that is going to be comfortable with heat changes. So something like a Pyrex glass bowl. Right, I'm going to cut these in half now so we can use these as molds, and then we'll start making our soap. Now, of course, you could use a milk container or anything really to make your molds out of, but if you're going to use a container like this, there's a couple of great little tips. So we can make a bar of soap the whole size of this container. All we need to do is chop off the top, like so, and then cut that in half. And the reason we're doing that is we can use this at either end to make the ends smooth and cover over all those creases where the container's all folded together, and it'll give us a smooth edge to our soap. Right, I'm going to rinse these out and then we'll start making our soap. Right, so the recipe I'm using is here. These are the ingredients and the amounts. So we've got olive oil, we've got 300 grams there, which is about 10.5 ounces. We've got coconut oil in here. As you can see, it's 380 grams, that's 13.5 ounces. We've got lard, which I've rendered from our own animals here, and that's 335 grams, 13 ounces. We've got goat's milk. Now that's currently in the freezer, and we'll get that out in a second. I'll talk to you all about that and why it's in the freezer. But there's 335 grams there, 13 ounces, goat's milk. And then we've got our lye or lye crystals, sodium hydroxide. Yeah, so this is also known as caustic soda, sodium hydroxide, that's our lye. And as I said, 160 grams or 5.5 ounces. So that there is all the ingredients you're going to need to make your goat's milk soap. Now the one other thing that you need to do slightly differently if you're doing goat's milk soap as opposed to cold pressed soap without goat's milk is how you mix your lye. So when you're using a regular recipe without goat's milk, you're going to mix your lye with water. And what's going to happen as soon as that lye mixes with the water, it's going to form a chemical reaction that's going to raise the temperature of that water. It's going to get quite hot. That's fine with water because there's no ill side effects. But when you do that with milk, what can happen is it can heat the milk up to such a degree that the fats can cook and that it can give off quite a nasty smell that won't leave the soap when it's finished. So it's really important that we don't allow that milk to get to that temperature. And how we achieve that goal is by starting with frozen milk. So the day before you start doing this, freeze your milk. Now I've got mine in 2 or 3 like big lumps. I think in an ideal world, what I would have done is I would have put it in ice cube trays just so that it's smaller parts for us to mix together. The only other thing we need to do before we get our milk out of the freezer is just to mix these fats together, and we need to get them up to a temperature that they're all liquid. So I'm going to pop these in the microwave now and melt them, and then mix them together with this guy, and then we can get our milk. Now while that fat's warming up, you might be wondering what this is. Well, this is just paprika. Couple of teaspoons, and we're going to use that as a colouring to give our soap a lovely orange colour. Now we could have used turmeric and gone for more of a yellow colour, but there are some food colourings or some food flavourings rather that you shouldn't really use in soaps because they can dye, and you don't want to dye your skin when you're washing it. Now of course you can buy specialist soap colouring agents, but I wanted to avoid buying anything specific. I wanted to make this with just things I had lying around the house, things we have every day. So that's what this recipe is using. Right, in goes our coconut oil. So this is now going to be all of our oils mixed together. Okay, so here's our goat's milk, and I've just got this from the freezer. So what we're going to do next is we're going to add our lye to it. And the lye is going to warm up, defrost, and really warm up that milk quite quickly once we start getting it in there. So we're going to use just a regular kitchen utensil to kind of work it into the surface and help to break it down as quickly as we could. Like I say, in an ideal world, I think I would have started with ice cube sized pieces, but this is what we have. We're just going to use a regular stainless steel spoon. Again, you'll hear, I've mentioned this on lots of my videos, you'll hear lots of stuff about people saying you shouldn't use metal for doing lots of the things that we do in the kitchen. But they're talking about reactive metal, which doesn't include stainless steel. This is going to break down this. Let's get a bit more of that on there. Let's get it all on there. This is going to break down that milk quite quickly if we can work it in. Lye is, obviously, you've all heard the scare stories, and it can be quite dangerous if you get it on your skin. It's extremely caustic, which is like the opposite of acidic. When we talk about acids that are corrosive, this is the completely opposite end of the scale. So acids can be corrosive, and so can alkalis. So you want to be a bit careful not to get this on your skin. If you do happen to get some on your skin, you can neutralise it with some vinegar, and you'll want to do that quite quickly. So long as you're careful, you know, it doesn't have to be a big scary thing. Okay, so I think we're there. So now we're going to add our oil, mix it all together. And then we're going to hand over to our hand blender. So all we're going to do now is mix everything together and then turn the blender on, and we're waiting for it to come to what's called come to trace, which basically means that it starts thickening a bit like custard. I'll show you what that looks like. So that's still very liquid. What we're looking for when we do this, and it leaves drops on the top, we want them to leave those drops sat on the surface, a bit like you could imagine with custard. Okay, that's at trace now. You see how it's leaving marks across the surface when it drips in, and just feels like the consistency of custard. So we are there. Okay, now that that is at trace, we can add our paprika to colour it. Now, even though everything's mixed together here, and this essentially is our soap, you still want to keep your fingers out of it. You don't want to touch it at the moment because it's still incredibly caustic until it's had a chance to actually set and settle down. It'll take a little while for that to happen. We're going to stir that in as best we can. Now, of course, I could still be using the blender to do this, but I quite like that inconsistency of coloration. So I don't mind or actively encourage it to be a little bit patchy in its colour, you know? That's just my preference. The first surprising thing was how long it actually took to get to trace. I was mixing with the blender for well over 10 minutes. Eagle-eyed amongst you will notice I had to switch blenders halfway through because the motor in the blender I was using was getting very hot. So I had to switch blenders. But we're now ready to get that in our molds. That's our soap all made, ready to cure. Insofar as the curing process, what we're going to do with this now is we're going to put it straight in the fridge where it will stay for a few hours, at which point it will still want to just sit and be left to cure even longer for a few weeks before we use it. We'll speak to you when we're ready to slice this up. So here's our blocks of soap. They've been in the fridge overnight. You'll hear lots of different things about whether or not they need to go in the fridge. I think it helps with your goat's milk soap because as they're curing, they can get quite warm and sometimes crack. Apparently, like I say, this is my first time trying it, but they've been in the fridge overnight. They've been in the fridge for, I would guess, getting on for 24 hours. Now, as you can see, they're quite solid. We can, move the edge of the board away from them and they don't collapse. So we're gonna take these out now and cut them into our bars of soap. Now I'm just gonna do it on a tea towel because I think that's gonna be the easiest way to clean up. And let's see how easily we can take them out. I might just rip the side of my molds. I'm going to use this really thin knife. So this is a really cheap knife. I think I got it as part of a Christmas present cheese board one year. So it's a really, really cheap knife, but it's really, really thin. Let's see how easily we can cut this into our bars. And that's really easy. Oh, that's fantastic. So there is our first bar of soap. Now, with regards to the colouring, I was hoping that the paprika we used would have given us a fairly reddish, pinkish soap. That hasn't happened. You can see the little specks of paprika in it, which I was okay with as well. But we haven't got our reddish colouring running through it. That's okay, we can live with that. We've got two different size moulds because these are going to be quite big bars of soap and the other ones will obviously be that little bit smaller. Now I would say that was deliberate, but I'd be lying. When I made the first one, I thought it was best to cut off the spout bit, that bit there. So I cut it just below it in half, and then I realised after I'd made this one that I could do it the other way and just slot that offcut in to cover up that spout bit. So that's what I did with the second one. I'm glad I did because I wouldn't have fit all of my soap into two moulds like this. And there we have it, all of our bars of soap, and these are now going to want to just sit at room temperature for anything from 4 to 6 weeks, and then they're going to be ready to go. If you're using too early, they're just going to crumble and they're just not going to harden up enough. We need them to, like I say, cure for about 6 weeks, which gives us just enough time for these guys to make Christmas presents if we wanted to. We have a few people that we basically for Christmas we give and receive homemade gifts like jars of jams and chutneys and ciders and soaps. So these are going to make perfect Christmas gifts for some of those people, and the rest obviously we'll use ourselves. So there you go. That's how easy it is. I'm super thrilled with this. Really happy. It's my first attempt, and as you can see, anyone can do it. Anyone can have a go at this homestead project. So please do give it a go and let me know how you get on in the comments. That's our homemade goat's milk soap. Thank you ever so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please make sure you press that like button. Also leave me a comment down below. Let me know, have you made soap before? Are you using a method similar to this? Are you using a different method? Am I doing something wrong? I'm all ears, so please do let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. Please make sure you subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And also come and check us out elsewhere. We've got the Self-Sufficient Hub podcast, which releases 3 times a week, and we'd love to see you over there. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you really soon. Cheers. Anyone can have a go at this homestead